Good evening, and welcome to the May 7th, 2014 legislative session of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining. Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Trustee Quezada?
Present.
Trustee Codman?
Present.
Trustee Garrity?
Present.
And Mayor Hanauer. Thank you.
I'm here too, yes.
Okay. This evening we have a public hearing in introductory local law number 1, 2014, entitled Vehicle and Traffic Law Revisions. Corporation Counsel?
Yes, hi, good evening. This public hearing concerns some changes that were necessary to your vehicle and traffic law, having to do with the adding a metered parking section on Central Avenue. There are some meters that were installed during a streetscape project, so you need to add those meters before you can start to use those for public parking purposes. The other item had to do with adding 2 new long-term parking spaces on the north side of Leonard Street. The village manager found that there was some extra space on Leonard Street when we were doing some site work involving the We Can Do It parcel. So those will need to be established as 2 new long-term parking spaces. And those are tag parking during the day for employees and also people who are running the businesses on the main street. And the third item had to do with a comment made by some members of the public one evening at your board meeting with difficulty with people actually with the snow removal and the snow issues this year on Cedar Place, having difficulty getting out of their own driveways because of the parking that was inhibiting their ability to move. So based upon a site visit and recommendations from the police department, we've changed some of the restrictions along Cedar Place.
Is there anyone here to address the board on this issue? Not seeing anyone, can I have a motion to close this public hearing?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Our second public hearing of the evening is sidewalk, driveway aprons, and curb assessments for 2013. Is there anyone here to address that issue? Not seeing any. Might I have a motion to close that public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those
Board?
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing on proposed local law 2, 2014, entitled Revisions to Chapter 75 Animals to require apiary registration? Apiary, excuse me. Corporation Counsel?
Certainly. This, of course, has been in progress for about a year. We took a look at this opportunity for the village from many sides. At one point, we were considering adding this to our zoning code, and when New York City promulgated recent regulations having to do with registration, it was suggested by the new subcommittee for this issue that we take a look at approaching it in the same fashion. So I took fresh eyes, and we've decided, and based upon your guidance, we've decided to insert the annual apiary registration requirement into your animals provision, and that's the local law that is before you today. It will require annual registration for all apiaries, which are beehives, within the boundaries of the village of Ossining. It also requires you to promulgate rules and regulations, which I have in draft, and we can discuss that at the next work session if appropriate. And also, I've drafted a proposed registration form, which we can talk about at the next work session. But this evening, it's the text of the law itself that is under consideration, and you would, at this time, take comments from members of the public.
Is there anyone who's come to address the board on this issue?
On the bees? No?
You don't have to be complaining if you want to comment.
You can say it's a good idea if you think so.
Not seeing anyone, may I have a motion to close this public hearing?
I think, however,
I'm excited about the little registration tags for each bee. Yes, yes. The ID cards.
at Buzz Buzz. Yes, come
Please.
to the microphone, please.
The microphone is really for the people at home to hear you. And could you let us know your name and where you live?
Okay, I'm Nancy Ertz, a Dominican Sister of Hope, and we're at Mariondale property. And would like to speak on behalf of having bees in the village, especially to support a lot of the organic gardens on our property as well as within the village itself, people who are planting their own food and flowers and things to be able to have the bees available.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much. We're going to keep this hearing going for the purpose of getting written comments. There have been a lot of people who have commented over the last year, but they're not here tonight. So we're going to leave it open for the purpose of written comments until Friday, end of business Friday. And if you have written comments, please direct them to Assistant Village Manager Christina Papes at cpapes@villageofossining.org or at 16 Croton Avenue, Ossining, New York, 10562. Please get them in before 4 o'clock on Friday.
Yeah, let's get a buzz going on this.
Can we clear? Can we?
I think we have another person to speak, two more
Oh, good.
to speak.
Hello, I'm Betty Ann Jaster, also from Mariondale, and we've had a garden over there for many years, and we're very interested in supporting the pollinators because we believe that without food we won't have people, and it's really essential to be able to provide safe habitat for the bees, and we'd like to be a part of that. We know people in Croton have bees, and people in the town of Ossining have bees, and I've worked with homeless people in Colorado in the inner city, and people were afraid of bees, but they became beekeepers, and now they can say, I'm not homeless anymore, I'm a beekeeper. So people can change and they can grow from the experience of noticing the mysticalness of bees. I learned from being there, and someone told me, oh, we have to move. We were standing in the bee line, and I said, is that what a bee line is? I've always heard that term, but I didn't know it was a real thing, you know. So I just want to support the whole idea of paying attention to the natural world for all of our sakes, because we see what's happening with climate change. It's very serious, and we just like to urge all of us to begin to see the earth as a living organism worth relating with, and gardening is one way. We've shared food with the Ossining Food Pantry. We have low-income people who come and garden with us, so we try to build a sense of community around this. We know there's people in town who belong to Transition Ossining and Transition Westchester, and all of us are trying to build resilient communities by just being present to one another. At our garden, we have multicultural people being a part of it, and so we want to plant for pollinators, which includes monarch butterflies, which we've seen less and less of over the years. So we expect to plant some milkweed also. So I just want to urge us to see this as part of a bigger picture, and it's not just at Mariondale or just a few people in town, but we're making a positive step if you go for this changing the ordinance and making new regulations or whatever, but it's a wonderful thing, and I just encourage you to support it. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
I just wanted to. Thank you. Thank you for your service and your wonderful energy and all that you do out of Mariondale. It's great work, and you're building a community. And I just want to say how much I respect the work you do. Thank you for coming and speaking today.
My name is John Bernard. As a brief introduction, I like honey, and that's when I started keeping bees. I also was able to work with New York State as an apiary inspector. I was the last apiary inspector for this general area until they lost funding for the program. Because of that position, throughout Long Island, Manhattan, Westchester County, Columbia County, Dutchess County, I have had my hands into thousands of beehives. Some operations were commercial, consisting of 200 to 1,000 hives, but most of the hives that I inspected were backyard beekeepers. They were on farms, they were on CSA farms, they were in backyards in the middle of towns and cities, on rooftops in Manhattan, in the Bronx, in Brooklyn, in tiny little checker backyards in Brooklyn. It's unbelievable how many beehives are everywhere. I'm blessed with having been able to see most of them in those 8 counties. I think I pretty near got 85%. That was the job. Best job I've ever had. Unfortunately, they don't fund that position anymore. I would encourage the ordinance to be passed just so that Ossining has the privilege of encouraging beekeeping. It's a wonderful hobby. They're not pets, but they certainly do a lot of benefits for people, wonderful training for kids, and they're just a good thing to have hanging around. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And again, we're going to keep the hearing open so that anyone with written comments can send them to Assistant Manager Christina Papes by Friday at 4 o'clock. It was quite gratifying this morning to see on the above the fold, the front page of the New York Times, a very large in-color article about climate change and what is going on across this country. The Times has been sort of dipping its toe and then its ankle, etc., in, but now they're in completely, and I think it was a startling revelation to people who have said, "Oh, what climate change?" If they're paying attention, there is that startling revelation. But thank you all for coming tonight.
Could I clarify, are you going to close tonight's public hearing and then just continue to accept
Yes.
written comments? Okay, so
Yeah.
you'll need to pass it.
Lori Lee, could you just explain to the folks watching or the folks in the room what would be a likely path forward after tonight's public comments? We accept them in writing, and then, but it's not a law that's being passed at this time. Could you clarify that?
That is correct. If you choose to close the public hearing this evening and simply set a deadline for written submissions at Friday at 4, and you pass that resolution tonight, then the next step would be to place this back on a work session, at which point you would review the pros and cons based upon the submissions and the comments and your personal views of the law, and also it would give you a chance to review the proposed registration form and also give you a chance to review the rules and regulations. Once you are comfortable with the law in a final form, and also with the rules and regulations in a final form, then we could place this on a legislative agenda, and you could adopt the local law and also pass a resolution to adopt the rules and regulations, at which point the law would spring into effect upon the filing with Albany, and you could begin to take registrations at that point. So we would have to establish a date in the future for its effectiveness, but you essentially would be completing your actions at a legislative session of your choosing in the near future.
Thank you. I'd also like to just take a moment, and the folks who spoke here from the public have been helpful to this process, so very helpful. None of us on the board or who are in a position to be crafting this legislation are ourselves beekeepers. And the sisters at Mariondale brought to our attention, before I was even on the board a couple of years ago, their interest in being able to keep bees, and really inspired folks to start looking into it in the village. And along the way, we've had a lot of guidance from some experienced beekeepers, not least of which is John Bernard, who spoke, our former New York State apiary inspector. Has been very helpful in offering us guidance and information on what would be a responsible approach in our community. So thank you all very much.
John, I have a question for you. Yes. Is there a good time or better time than others to establish hives during the year?
In this area, if you want honey production, then you need to have a hive active and fairly strong by middle May, because nectar flows are generally pretty much finishing by the end of June in this area. You do get some nectar afterwards, but it's really not prodigious. So springtime is a good time. Right now is a good time to put them in.
But as you've heard, we can't establish
understand.
that date until then, so we have to talk
And this
about
season may be
next-
partially lost. That doesn't prevent someone from starting a hive now and getting it up to strength to overwinter. And there is benefit to that, because it will already have, the bees will have drawn out honeycomb, which next year in the spring they'll need, because then they can have places to store nectar, make honey, store pollen for food. And so that work effort is not lost. And that way next spring a beekeeper would start off at a dead run and probably have a successful year.
Good. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Is there anyone else? I then have a motion to close this public hearing.
Did you want to say something, Bob?
I thought I might.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd like to speak on behalf of enacting this legislation. There's a bee blight. It's worldwide. Right now, today, in no place in the world, for example, where bananas grow, can they be naturally pollinated, because there simply are no more bees in those places. So it has to either be done by bringing bees from elsewhere or by using artificial means. Out west in this country, the almond crop, there are no bees. So bees are brought in from all the way across the country to the farms where the almond trees grow in order for there to be almonds. This is so serious. Just to put it in perspective, if the last honeybee dies, the entire world food supply is gone in 4 years. That's it. No bees, no food. So many of the bees are dying because they're living in places where the chemicals used in commercial farming is poisoning them. By having bees in urban areas, in cities where there isn't chemicals being used for farming, in suburban areas like Ossining, where that's not an issue, we revive the species and we make it possible for the food supply across the country to be pollinated. This is a very serious issue. It's not just about a hobby and some nice homemade honey for your tea. This is about keeping food on the table across the world. It is important legislation not to be taken lightly. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Okay. May I have a motion to close this public hearing with written comments accepted at the village manager's office until this Friday at 4 p.m.?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Before we go forward, Joe, that hearing ended. You were the only person who might have come, but you were late. That does not mean we won't address that issue. So you have, Marianne's got the photograph, and it did start at 7:30, and you were 7 minutes late, and there was nobody else here to talk. So, actually, we will address that issue. I mean, it's clearly has merit. So, okay. Thanks.
I haven't been here in a while. Hi, Joe Rodriguez, Croton Avenue. Yeah, the issue is the, I guess the sidewalk that they did on my property there. I showed Mary Ann some pictures. It was done, I believe, in November, so it's not even been 4 months. And crack on the curb all the way almost to half of that one panel of the sidewalk. You know, if I'm paying for it, I would like for it, you know, not to have any problems in the future and have to do it at a later date. So village has these contracted to do it, you know, now. So probably if they're going to repair it, you know, at that point, then I would renegotiate or whatever, come back and, you know, pay whatever it needs to be to thing. Also, the square footage, I just happened to measure it tonight before I left. It's off by, like, my calculations, like 30 square feet. Because I don't know if they counted the curb as part of the square footage. But on this bill here, the curb is was not charged to me. So I don't know if they counted those 8 inches for the 72 feet that made the other difference of the 28 feet or not. But the measurement is off by like 30 feet, square feet.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks. That'll be worked out with the engineer and the office. Thanks, Joe. Yeah. Well, the engineer.
Now move on to mayor's and trustees' announcements.
I have only one announcement. As president of the Westchester Municipal Officials Association, I formed a committee to study shared services. The governor and the state legislature has passed a piece of legislation in their budget which requires us to look into the possibility of lowering our costs by perhaps sharing services or somehow other working with other communities. So Westchester Municipal Officials is 45 communities here in Westchester County. So I appointed the committee to collect information from our member communities as to current examples of sharing services between municipalities. And you all probably know that the village has about 14 or so intermunicipal agreements with the town of Ossining, but we have also some with the county itself, and we have mutual aid agreements for fire, police, and ambulance. It is also to collect information from our members as to areas of sharing under consideration, to obtain information from Westchester County regarding shared services offered by the county to local municipalities, and to share with Westchester Municipal Officials Association members the information collected regarding shared services between local municipalities and the services offered by the county. We just met on this yesterday. This is not the first meeting, but yesterday was the meeting at which we decided to go forward with a questionnaire for the boards of each of these communities that needs to be returned fairly soon. So I will give this to the manager's office for reproduction if we can talk about this on next week's agenda. There are a number of areas that we want to talk about in terms of priorities. 10 having to do with police, fire, and ambulance and emergency services, 10 having to do with less critical areas. So we have to choose the 10 out of a large list, 10 and 10. So I will give you this information for work on later. Anyone else?
Yes, I want to remind everybody that you can visit energizeossining.org any time of the year. In fact, I was contacted just last week by an Ossining community member who said she doesn't want to turn her air conditioning on again this season unless she has a better understanding of how the air flows in her home and so that she can be more efficient year-round. So I encourage you to visit energizeossining.org and find out how, for little or no out-of-pocket cost, you may be able to make your home more energy efficient. That makes your home more valuable. valuable. It makes your home less expensive to maintain, and bonus, you use less energy resources, which is good for everyone. And you may even have more money in your pocket, so you can spend it on something a lot more fun than heating oil or air conditioning costs. And so again, it's energizeossining.org, and I will also let you know that there are additional, there's a lot of financing opportunities to pay for it, and there are discounts that you can get for much of the work that might be done. And for people who are on a fixed income, there are often opportunities for additional reductions in the cost, so you would be financing even less of the cost. If you'd like to call, I don't even usually give out the phone number, but I will this tonight. It's 914-302-7300. So again, online, it's energizeossining.org. And if you want to call and talk to, probably Lauren is the woman you talk to. She's lovely and very helpful. The number is 914-302-7300. And one other item I'd like to call to everyone's attention is next Thursday at 6:30 at the Ossining Public Library, we will be screening our May installment of the Ossining Documentary and Discussion Series. And as the weather heats up, we'll be outside drinking water more and more. And this is going to help you think differently about bottled water. It's a movie called Tapped. We're very pleased to be partnering with Riverkeeper on this, and also our village engineer, Paul Fraioli, is going to be on the panel talking to us about our water supply and our treatment here in Ossining, and more broadly. He has a background in environmental science, so I'm sure it'll be a really interesting discussion. Please join us 6:30 next Thursday, May 15th, at the Ossining Public Library for Tapped.
Thank you.
It's boating season, folks. The moorings are in at the Ossining Boat and Canoe Club, and the docks are in at Westerly Marina and Chatamont Yacht Club. So, if you have not taken a boating safety course, please do so. You can see the schedule for the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliaries boating safety courses at force67.com. And the Ossining flotilla of the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary meets on the third Wednesday of every month at the Ossining Boat and Canoe Club at 7:30. So if you're interested in getting involved, if you'd like to take a boating safety course, please contact the Coast Guard Auxiliary, force67.com. And remember, boat smart. Wear a life jacket, don't drink and boat, and take a boating safety course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last, we will move on to administrative reports, and we'll begin with Village Manager Richard Lyons.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on a few of the resolutions on your agenda this evening. Resolution E and F both deal with the Kilbrook Sewer Reconstruction Project, which was a New York State mandated project on which the village is completing. This is as we know, a sewer main which is over 100 years old, and the village is complying with the DEC order, which mandates a completion by September. So these two resolutions actually provide for the additional funding in order to complete this project, and also amend the capital project to reflect the additional cost as part of that project. Resolution G is for parks playground improvements, establishing the capital project and providing for the funding for these important park improvements and rehabilitation of existing park playgrounds. And much of this money, if not all of it, comes from the special purpose fund for developers' monies that are deposited in lieu of providing parkland. So the village is very fortunate that it's seen a bit of development over the last few years, so been able to really build up that fund, and now it's being used for a very useful purpose, and the residents and children should benefit from that. Resolution H is their authorization to advertise for bids. This is something that the village routinely does, which is the cement mortar lining and replacement of water mains. Try to isolate which streets need this type of work more than others, and I believe it was said the other day that upon completion of this project we should be about 80 or 85% complete. So it's the village continuing to do the infrastructure work that it needs to keep the community up to date and attractive to people coming to live here. Resolution I is a certiorari refund for a particular piece of property. Resolution J is your annual bid award for materials, supplies, and services, which sort of provide a list of bidders that are available to do jobs as they come up during the year. Resolution K is in conjunction with the drinking water source expansion study, which the board had approved, and so now this sets up the funding source in order for that contract to go forward so that the village can identify duplicate sources of service and augmenting its water supply for the future. Resolution L is amending certain of the rules in connection with the village's affordable housing law. That law was put into effect a few years ago and has the village standing at the forefront to provide affordable housing in all projects. This Resolution L is to augment and update the rules now that we've had a couple of years of experience under our belt. Resolution M, we're happy that Keenan House is back in business, and we urge all of our residents to go down and visit the new owners. And as part of that, again, we're pleased that Keenan House is back, and they'll be installing their sidewalk cafe, and that permit will be issued by the manager's office. And this particular resolution provides for a waiver of setback from a tree and a sign. So it will be exactly the location that you're familiar with from last year, and we'll be delighted to see people sitting out on the sidewalk having dinner once again. So thank you.
And it's the same waiver as last year.
I just have one follow-up comment to make on the Parks and Playground Improvements Capital Project. With the Treasurer Tom Warren's help, this is the first project you'll be awarding under the new procurement policy you established having to do with piggybacking. This was a learning process, but we got through it, and I'm pleased to say that I did see a purchase order, so I know that this will be moving forward. But this sets up the project, and the work that you did on amending your procurement policy about a month and a half ago sets up the fact that you can move very quickly because you're piggybacking on consortium bidding. So we did take a really hard look at the documentation from the consortium, and we took a hard look to make sure we were connecting the dots to the local provider of this playground equipment. And through Henry's good work also, he was able to negotiate some additional reductions in the cost, including some shipping costs and some cost of installation. So I'm pleased to see that this budget modification is on for this evening in furtherance of the procurement and also the projects. So I just wanted to point that out.
On to Captain Scott Craven in place of Chief Joseph Burton.
My favorite report so far.
Do we have any organizational announcements? Do we have any comments on any of the village board resolution?
I don't know, Bobby, falling down on the job.
Approval of minutes. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the minutes of the April 16th, 2014 regular meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. On the board? Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolved the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the minutes of the April 26, 2014 special meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Board? Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolved the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated May 7, 2014 in the amount of $748,772.43. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolved that upon the recommendation of the Fire Chief, Daniel Chimo of Ossining, New York, was elected an active member of Senate Hook and Ladder Company No. 1 for interior firefighting at their regular meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A resolution authorizing the construction of sewer improvements in the Kilbrook area in and for the Village of Ossing, Westchester County, New York, at a maximum estimated cost of $5,008,000, and authorizing the issuance of $708,000 serial bonds of said village to pay costs thereof. Be it resolved by the affirmative vote of not less than two-thirds of the total voting strength of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossing, Westchester County, New York, as follows. Section 1, the construction of sewer improvements in the Kilbrook area in and for the Village of Ossing, Westchester County, New York, pursuant to an order on consent with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, including preliminary costs and costs incidental thereto, is hereby authorized at a maximum estimated cost of $5,008,000. Section 2, it is hereby determined that the aforesaid purpose constitutes a Type 2 action as defined under regulations of the State of New York promulgated under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, which by definition therein will not have a significant adverse impact upon the environment. Section 3, it is hereby determined that the plan for the financing of such $5,008,000 maximum estimated cost is as follows. 1. By the issuance of the $300,000 serial bonds authorized pursuant to a bond resolution dated December 18, 2012. 2. By the issuance of the $4 million serial bonds authorized pursuant to a bond resolution dated October 1, 2013. And 3. By the issuance of an additional $708,000 serial bonds of said village, hereby authorized to be issued therefore pursuant to the provisions of the local finance law. Section 4, it is hereby determined that the period of probable usefulness of the aforesaid specific object or purpose is 40 years, pursuant to subdivision 4 of paragraph A of section 11 of the local finance law. It is hereby further determined that the maximum maturity of serial bonds herein authorized will exceed 5 years. Section 10, this resolution takes effect immediately pursuant to Section 36A of the local finance law and shall be published in summary form in the official newspaper of said village for such purpose, together with a notice of the village clerk in substantially the form provided in Section 81 of the local finance law. Do I have a motion?
So, second.
The board? Madam Clerk?
Okay, this is a roll call vote. Trustee Garrity?
Aye.
Trustee Codman?
Aye.
Trustee Cazada? Trustee DeRio?
Aye.
And Mayor Hanover.
Aye.
Thank you.
Anonymous.
Whereas the Board of Trustees had heretofore authorized serial bonds in the amounts of $300,000 for engineering and construction management services and $4 million as an early estimate for construction costs related to the Kilbrook Sewer Improvement Capital Project, and whereas the village engineer has presented a total project budget in the amount of $5,008,000 for said capital improvements to the Kilbrook sewer line required by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, now therefore be it resolved, the budget for the Kilbrook Sewer Improvement Capital Project is modified for an additional $708,000 to a total authorized budget in the amount of $5,008,000 and to be funded by proceeds of serial bonds as follows. Increased capital projects appropriation, account number 505-8120-2134, Kilbrook Sewer Improvement 2013, $708,000. Increased capital project estimated revenues, account number 505-0505-5710-0134, serial bond proceeds, Kilbrook Sewer Improvements 2013, $708,000. Project number 2134, Kilbrook Sewer Improvements 2013, current budget $4,300,000, amended budget $5,008,000. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Whereas the Board of Trustees wishes to establish a capital project budget for the purchase and installation of playground equipment and other related improvements at Nelson Park, Veterans Park and Dale Park at an estimated maximum cost of $160,000, and to authorize project financing. Now therefore be it resolved, the Board of Trustees authorizes the use of $160,000 from the recreation fees from developers in lieu of Parkland Special Purpose Trust Fund to establish the park's playground improvements capital project, and be it further resolved, the budgets for the Special Purpose Trust Fund and the park's playground improvements capital project budgets are modified as follows. Decrease Special Purpose Trust Fund, account number 0014-0905, recreation fees from developers in lieu of Parklands, $160,000. To finance capital project 505-7110, 2151, Parks Playgrounds Improvement Capital Project. Increase Special Purpose Trust Fund appropriation, account number 014-9550, 0850, 0003, transfer to capital projects funds from recreation fees from developers in lieu of Parklands, $160,000. Increase capital projects appropriation, account number 505-7110, 2151, Parks Playground Improvements 2014, $160,000. Increase capital projects fund estimated revenues, account number 505-0505-5030-0151, interfund transfer, special purpose fund, Parks Playground Improvement 2014, $160,000. Project number 2151, Parks Playground Improvement Capital Project, original budget $160,000. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. On the board?
Yeah, I'd like to comment. This is a great example of a real team effort internally here in the village. Not only do we get great pricing, but because of keen eye of Tom Warren and the hard work of Henry Atterbury, we were able to put together some really great improvements to our parks at a significant savings by, as Lori Lee had mentioned before, by changing our purchasing policy here. And I just want to call that out. Obviously, every penny we spend is important, and I want to call out the efforts of the people who were involved, including Lori Lee, to make sure everything was buttoned up tightly and everything worked out. And it'll obviously be to the benefit of these parks, the benefit to the children that live and reside here. Thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolved that the village clerk is authorized to advertise for bids for contract number DPW 14-03, cleaning, cement mortar lining, and replacement of water mains to be returnable to the office of the village clerk. Do I have a motion?
So moved. I'll second. That's
The board?
easier.
Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Whereas the Village of Ossing ceased being a tax assessing unit in 1989 and now adopts the Town of Ossing assessment roll for the Village of Ossing as prepared by the assessor of the Town of Ossing for all subsequent years, and where certain tax certiorari proceedings were instituted against the Town of Ossing by Antonio P. Chusa to review the assessment against petitioner's property situate at 130-136 Spring Street in the Village of Ossing and designated as Section 9707, Block 3, Lot 80, which said proceedings were recently concluded in the Westchester County Supreme Court under index numbers 2009-218-48, 2010-230-30, 2011-569-51, 2012, 672-02, 2013, 647-11, and whereas a judgment entered in favor of the petitioner, among other things, directs the Village of Ossing to audit and pay to the petitioner the amount of overpayment of real estate taxes determined in accordance with the assessments fixed and determined by said judgment in the total amount of $4,976.30 as more fully detailed in Schedule A. Whereas any and all refunds of taxes necessitated by said judgment are to be made without interest if paid within 60 days after service upon the village of a certified copy of said judgment. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining, upon certification by the village treasurer that all of the aforesaid taxes have been paid, hereby authorizes and directs the village treasurer to make the payments of such refund of real property taxes due to the petitioner, Janata Lacombe and Associates, P.C., as attorneys, and it is further resolved that the village treasurer shall make a notation in the margin of the assessment rolls of the Village of Ossining that said assessments were reduced and payment of a refund of the overpayment of real property taxes was made pursuant to said judgment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Board? Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Whereas New York State law provides for a municipality to advertise and award bids for certain materials and supplies and services as specified therein through the use of an annual bid process which allows for the purchase of such items at a fixed cost to the municipality, and whereas the Village of Ossining has in place a procurement policy which provides for purchase and acquisition of certain materials and services by the village as required by the New York State law, and whereas the Village of Ossining has advertised for materials and supplies through the annual bid process and has incorporated in the annual bid requirements for signed purchase orders for certain work as well as maximum work to be undertaken by an annual contractor and maximum project expenditures without pre-approval of the village manager or board of trustees, consistent with New York State laws and the Village of Ossining procurement policy. And whereas the Village of Ossining has advertised for annual bids consistent with New York State law and has received responses to such advertisements, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby awards the bids for materials, supplies, and services for 2014 in accordance with the attached recommendation from the Department of Public Works. Items circled represent recommendations. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. On the board? Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolved, the 2014 Water Fund budget is modified as follows: to allow for the appropriation of accumulated surplus fund balance to be used to pay for a drinking water source expansion study and analysis proposed by Hazen and Sawyer, P.C., environmental engineers, accepted by the Board of Trustees as follows: increase water fund appropriation, account number 002-1440-0400, water engineering contractual, $188,000. Increase water fund appropriation fund balance, account number 002-0002-0599, water fund appropriated fund balance, $188,000. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. On the board? Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Whereas Chapter 62 of the Village Code, known as the Affordable Housing Law, provides in Article 3 for the adoption of certain rules and regulations that establish procedures and guidelines for the administration of affordable housing units in the village, and said article recognizes that such rules and regulations will be amended from time to time by the village board. And whereas the village board has determined the need to amend said rules and regulations consistent with the affordable housing law to address the need for clarification on when and how rental increases can be applied to occupied affordable units in the village. Now therefore be it resolved that the village board hereby adopts certain revisions to the rules and regulations authorized in Article 3, Chapter 62 of the Village Code as originally promulgated on April 14, 2006, last revised by resolution of the Board of Trustees January 15, 2013, to provide for clarification as to the application of rental increases to affordable units once a tenancy is established. And be it further resolved that the village clerk and the village planning department are directed to cease use of the rules and regulations dated January 15, 2013, and to disseminate the rules and regulations revised as of this date as necessary for the administration of the affordable housing law in the Village of Ossining. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Board?
Wanted to, I don't know, maybe Valerie could just come forward. just to give a clarification of what the changes are, just so the public knows why we're doing this.
Sure. And basically the clarification is so that as each development is ready to rent to and have their affordable units rented out, we negotiate with the developer as to what income level we are going to target those units at. So the new rules or the amendments to the rules and regulations better clarify that once a tenant is occupying a particular unit, and then let's say, for example, that unit was rented out at the 70% AMI, Westchester County AMI, that tenant, the rental increases are specifically just dealing with the increases in the annual AMI, and therefore that the landlord cannot turn around and say, well, next year I want to target you at the 80% AMI. So this allows for that AMI to be set throughout their tenancy, and then once the tenant leaves, the landlord can then adjust the original AMI.
Thank you.
And how is that different from the current?
Right now,
regulation?
it doesn't explicitly clarify.
Doesn't
that
speak to it, right?
Right, that the initial rental that you're setting it at, for example, at 70%, is to be maintained during that tenancy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is very important, and one of the things that's important about this is that once an individual that has, a workforce housing or a low-income rental, that the increases are controlled based on an index,
Yes.
and there can't be any arbitrary changes and rent increases by the landlord. And this is very important. This is something that's going on in New York City that they're doing. We're way ahead of this here in Ossining around this issue, and I'm glad that this was brought to our attention. I appreciate it, Valerie, that put this together, because it really clarifies and strengthens our policy so people can live here. People of all economic means can live and work here in Ossining. Thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Whereas as a holder of Sidewalk Cafe Permit 1-2014, issued by the village manager pursuant to Chapter 216 of the Ossining Village Code for the property located at 199 Main Street, 199 Keenan LLC, submitted a request to the village board for a waiver from the 4-foot setback outlined in Section 216-4B related to an existing sign and tree planter maintained by the village on the sidewalk, which planter straddles the line of the property and the adjacent property at 195-197 Main Street. And whereas pursuant to the requirements of Section 216-4K of the Code, included with such request was proof of certified mailing by Keenan House Restaurant to the property owners and/or tenants of properties adjacent to the subject property, and whereas the board placed the matter on the agenda for consideration at its public meeting on April 23, 2014, and whereas the board, after taking a statement from Mr. Ali Sahan representing Keenan House Restaurant and noting that no further comments were received by the village by any means of communications, proceeded to deliberate on the merits of the request and balance the equities of impacts and/or benefits of the requested waivers. And whereas the board reviewed the submission of Keenan House Restaurant and considered the totality of circumstances and found that the requested waivers from the 4-foot setback to the pre-existing village-maintained tree planter and sign was appropriate, since A, it would not impede circulation or traffic flow or parking in the vicinity. B, neither the pre-existing sign nor the planter could be relocated. C, access to adjacent properties and businesses would not be disrupted. And D, the retractable belt barrier to be used by Keenan House Restaurant was portable, not fastened to the sidewalk, and could be easily removed in the event of an emergency requiring immediate access to the entirety of the sidewalk area. Now therefore be it resolved that for the reasons stated above, pursuant to Section 216-4K of the Code, the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees hereby approves a waiver from the 4-foot setback requirement from the pre-existing village-maintained tree planter and sign located on the sidewalk in front of the subject property at 199 Main Street. And be it further resolved that the waiver granted herein shall be personal to the entity 199 Keenan LLC, not a right which runs with the land. Such waiver shall be valid and run concurrent with the underlying Sidewalk Cafe license number 1, 2014, to wit, April 1st through October 31st, 2014. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
On the board?
Welcome back, Keenan House. Thank you so much.
It'll be good to be sitting on the sidewalk having some lunch.
Absolutely.
Had dinner there again tonight. Very nice.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That completes your resolutions for this evening. Do we have any continuing business of the board?
No, ma'am.
Do we have any new business of the board?
No, ma'am.
Might we then entertain a recess?
Is there
Unless we
anyone who
have
wishes to
individuals who
address
would
the
like
board?
to speak.
Aha, Bobby.
Okay. Might I have a motion to recess?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
This ends the televised portion of this evening's meeting, but I would like to make one announcement before we close this session, and that is that the Clearview School is having a 5K race here in Ossining on May 18th, and the registration will take place at 7:45 to 8:45 in the morning at the Joseph G. Caputo Community Center. The Kids Fun Run is at 8:45. The run starts at 9 o'clock. The walk starts, not all of us can run. The walk starts at 9:05. The award ceremony will be 10 a.m. and the raffle drawing, and I'm not sure what it is you win, the kids or the whatever, is at 10:15. So for more details, please visit www.clearviewschool5k.org. Thank you. And with that, this is the end of the meeting, and we will see you next Wednesday, here I go again, next Wednesday at Village Hall, 16 Croton Avenue at 7:30 for a work session. Have a good week.
Oh, yeah, turn the light.
You thought you were out of here?
Camera back on. No. Yes. We're live.
Okay, so this evening for the work session, we have one item, and then we will ask for a resolution to go into executive session for legal advice and to discuss various contractual matters. The item on for your agenda this evening for the work session is it's about the time that grant applications are due to the most recent funding that's been offered by the state of New York for the grant process. So Valerie has been parsing through the different opportunities, and we've had a number of discussions with the state already. And so Valerie is here this evening to inform you of the possibilities and to seek your direction. Valerie?
Good evening. Thank you for seeing me this evening. The grant applications were opened May 1st, and they're due June 16th, which is why I asked to come tonight as opposed to waiting another week. I've went through all the different possible grant applications. Our village engineer and superintendent of water and sewers, we sat down and reviewed a number of projects that are pending in the village or upcoming, and to see how many of those would be applicable. I also spoke with the village manager at length, and we also spoke with Empire State Development as to possible projects and where they would fit maybe in some of the grants. So I'm here tonight to speak about 3 specific projects that I think would be applicable to what we see being offered by the state. The first is the expansion of the village's water supply. As you know, that you're embarking on a study to look at the water resource expansion, and this particular grant would be for some of the costs of the construction. The fund itself is through the Empire State Development Grant Funds, and it's specifically for infrastructure, and the infrastructure is supposed to be tagged towards fostering further investment and attracting new businesses and expanding existing businesses. And considering that this water source supplies both the village and the town, and a number of large businesses in both the town and the village, as well as the Sing Sing Correctional Facility, and then the fact that the village is also going through redevelopment in a number of different areas, that this would lend itself, we think, to be very applicable to this particular project, to this grant application. The idea here, the way this particular grant works, is it will cover no more than 20% of the total costs. And at our meetings with the state, they have said that they'll probably most likely, we shouldn't ask for anything more than about $3 million. So clearly it's not going to cover the entire cost remotely, a big chunk of the cost, but it will help to for this particular project. And I would also like to submit this project as a priority project for the village as well. Again, there's $150 million for this particular grant fund. However, it gets split between 10 different regional councils, and the way they're splitting the money, 5 are going to get $25 million, and then the rest of the 5 will have to split $25 million. So we don't know where the Mid-Hudson region is going to fall, but we do think that this is a good application.
Great.
The second project is the dock extension. Last year, this board allowed me to submit for both the design and construction. We were awarded for the design, so naturally, we'd like to go back for the construction. And I did talk to GDC has a grant writer that would, I already wrote, we pretty much have a grant that we just have to turn around, but they do have a grant writer that is available to the village that we can utilize for this particular grant, so that would be a little bit helpful to me. But we'd like to resubmit for the construction of the dock. Now that's a 50-50 match, and that would still be, last year we put in for about $600,000, $300,000 from the village, and $300,000 from the state. And that would be under the Local Waterfront Revitalization Program grant. Then the third project I wanted to talk to this board about is dealing with 200 Main Street. As I know, this board is still looking for a private developer to rehabilitate the building. However, it's been a number of years since that we've been looking for a potential developer. So what I would like to just suggest is that there are grants, since this particular building is not only in a National Historic District, but it's also a National Registered building, that there are grants for historic preservation, specifically to deal with rehabilitation of historic places. This particular grant, though, would be, for 200 Main Street, it would have to conform to the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties, and it would ultimately, in the end, have some sort of conservation easement or a preservation covenant associated with the property, which means that as somebody else takes over that property at some point, that they would have to adhere to the Secretary of Interior standards for that building. What I would like to put forth for this particular project would be a grant to rehabilitate the building just to get it shovel ready. So that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be dealing with all the electrical and utilities, but dealing with probably preventing the additional water infiltration, maybe the asbestos, or if there's any asbestos. I don't think we have that confirmation one way or the other, but to take a look at that, and also to take a look at the mold removal from the building. So to sort of have a shell that would allow for, maybe make it easier for a developer to come in.
It'll make it more cost effective for somebody to put a project in there if we do all this mitigation before we put it out to bid again.
Right. Now, clearly there is a match with this, so this would mean that the village would be putting some funds into this particular grant. I've looked at a number of past studies for 200 Main Street. The last one we received was just for consultation to identify what type of work, but previous studies clearly had that type of work done, along with like elevator shafts and a whole bunch. So that was that particular those cost estimates were like over $1 million, but there was a lot of utilities work and everything like that included. So what I'd like to try to do is identify some elements and maybe put in a grant for, I don't know, about $150,000, something like that, and then at least see where we are. I mean, I can come back to this board to discuss what cost estimates we're looking at and what type of work, and then see if the board is interested in moving forward with submitting a grant.
50-50 match?
It is a 50-50.
Sorry, Valerie, do you have anything else?
No.
Okay. Actually, this question is more like for Bill, for a village manager. Richard, I remember part of the negotiations and part of what we agree with one of the developers in the waterfront, Kingsborough project, it was that he will be looking into this property as well. And he was supposed to have an engineer look into this, have a report for us. I believe our engineer was also looking into 200 Main Street as well. Do you have anything?
Paul talked to.
Okay.
Next step.
Right, and I have that particular, I have the quote from that
And
architectural firm.
the original Capelli Ginsberg was going to, they had actually owned this building at one time. They were going to use it for their
No,
sales.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about that was part of the downtown money that we have.
Oh, no, I know. In lieu of that, the money was deposited with the downtown committee. and
Yeah,
it
but I
could be
thought
used-
part of the agreement that we signed with him, it was that he was going to look for a property within the village. He actually thought 100 Main Street would be perfect, $400,000.
Right, well, he deposited the money with the village.
We have
He
the
could
money.
always do that. Yeah, he could do that.
Yeah.
That's
We
as
ha-
far as he went on
We
that.
have to be careful not to do too much, because if, we spend all this money, putting in stuff like elevators, they get the elevator, we get the shaft.
Right, no, that's why I clearly wouldn't do elevators. It was really more of trying to, it's really more of trying to restore
Valerie,
the
so
building.
you say you have a quote for the architect firms. How much was that? How much was the,
Well, this architectural firm was going to not only go in and do the assessment, but they were going to come up with the rehabilitation and like alternatives, and they were going to deal with the bid, writing the bid document and the administration of the project.
pretty much
So-
they were going to do the whole
Well,
damn
right,
part,
that
the
whole
thing.
thing was going to be about $96,000.
How much?
96,000, but that was going to be a lot of work.
But the one
more
that you're
than-
talking about, it will be maybe not even half of that for the grant that you.
Well, the grant wouldn't necessarily, the grant is going to be for bricks and mortar.
Yeah.
Right. So this would be, bidding and stuff like that would be outside the bricks and mortar. However, the thought of this is going to look at smaller projects, not necessarily, because that particular project was going to look at the complete analysis of the building.
So-
Now, what we're trying to deal with is trying to prevent any other further degradation
So
of the
by
building.
doing this, by going with this grant, get this grant, 50-50, whatever we get, don't we have to have schematic, have to have plan already that we need to, things that need to be done on this building?
Right, so what I'd like to do is go back to Russ Swatsky, who's done a number of studies with that particular roof, to identify what he feels that needs to at least button up that portion. And then getting somebody, and whether it's probably not an architect, but somebody who deals with mold, and getting them in there and seeing what they, getting their feeling as to what the cost would be to remove the mold.
And you
At
can
least get
this
those two
done
things out of the way.
in this brief period of time before the 16th?
Well, I would like to try. I mean, if not, then then we wait another year.
I think this is we sort of talked about this before, and I think we need to stabilize the building. I
Right.
think that's really what we're talking about here, is doing enough work so we can keep this situation from becoming worse and stabilizing it, and then worrying about what other infrastructure goes in later on, whether it's electrics or other activities that would take place in the interior of the building. I think that's the idea. And as far as I'm concerned, if we had, at one point, I don't remember if it was a work session or not, but we had discussed putting some money into the building just so we could, again, sort of stop the bleeding, as it were, because this is an ongoing problem with water and mold. So, I think we should you should go for the, I mean, if you think 250 is a good number, I think if we would have to pay that anyway, and now if we got the grant, we'd pay half, I think that's a win.
I mean, I'm giving, again, I will
it's a
come
rough
back.
number, I
Right,
understand.
if I get a green light, then I will come back with more definitive number, hopefully within the next few weeks, and then that way we can,
I think we're all on the same.
We need one resolution for all three? Or
well,
do we need-
no, what's going to happen, each one of the grants, some require resolutions, some do not, so I will put forth resolutions where they're needed. In the one with 200 Main Street, most likely that'll probably be a last-minute resolution because I want to make sure I have the more appropriate pricing for this board to consider.
what do you need right now?
Very important building. It's a gateway to
Right.
the downtown.
I just needed your feedback tonight so that I can get started working on these grants.
Okay.
Yes. Go.
Get back to us
good by
and tell
me.
us what else you need. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I would want to know. Talked about how the short window is. All of a sudden, first week of May, oh, here it is. You got
Right.
6 weeks to put your grants together. Nobody tells you when the grants are going to come in.
Well,
Have at it,
So-
Valerie.
Yeah.
Right. The two grants that the dock extension, we already wrote one last year. GDC said their grant writer's going to help me with that. 200 Main Street, I'll be writing that, and the expansion of the water resource, I'll be writing that. Although I've also talked to Andy, and he's going to have Michael Broder also provide, which is our consultant, provide any input that I need. So I am going to get help on that grant as well. Okay.
So you will have some answers for us next week?
Well, maybe not next week, but hopefully soon. All right.
Thanks, Val.
Thank you.
As well.
Thank you.
I have a motion to adjourn to executive session for legal advice.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Well, we're adjourned.